The full moon drew near, which meant Josh went to Emmett's family's to shift. Josh and his father-in-law stood on the deck, cold beers in hand, just shooting the breeze while they grilled some brats. "How's the new job going?" the dad asked. "It's all right. I've got a project going on, so the time goes by." "What's your project?" "I'm updating their right-to-know station. They had an audit about a week after they hired me, and they found some chemicals with outdated safety data sheets." No, they find it all?" "No, they didn't, but they were required to do an extent analysis." The dad nodded. "Oh yeah, I've done one of those before. What's the damage, or can you not tell me?" Josh shrugged. "Well, it's enough to make a project out of it. I'll be busy for a while. A few of the companies that we have the materials from, they just don't exist anymore. So I have to figure out what to do with that." The dad checked the brats and placed a pineapple, pepper, and onion kebab on the grill for Emmett. "This is for hazard communication, right? Whenever we had an audit with the Rangers, they found that we were doing things right. Never perfect, but all right. We made people aware of the hazards associated with the stuff that they were working on. The auditors who checked on us every time would give us a little bit of feedback, some places we could improve. The trick is to always have the auditor come in after lunch, when their day is half done and they'd already eaten." He chuckled. "All right, I think dinner is about done." Inside, Emmett and his mother set out containers of potato and broccoli salad from the deli and set it on the table. The four of them sat down for dinner, said grace, filled their glasses with cold ginger lemonade, and ate. "You know, Emmett, I'm hearing rumors that the Rangers are working on another edition of the Junior Ranger Handbook," his dad said. "Huh," Emmett nodded. "I'm pretty sure I still have my old one in my room somewhere. Maybe I can see what they changed." His father looked at him from across the table. "There's already been one update since you were in. But I was thinking you could bring in your expertise in the section about werewolves." The couple paused for a moment and looked at each other. "Dad, I don't think I'm an expert." "And don't sell yourself short now. You're a better expert than whoever wrote the section last time. I know you've only been around one werewolf, but that seems to be more exposure than the previous author. This is a good opportunity for you." He looked at Josh. "You would like to be better understood, wouldn't you? If we're lucky, even your family will see it." Josh shrugged. I don't know how my family feels about werewolves. We didn't really talk about it that much." "Huh." The dad leaned back and thought. "I already have a red line draft started, but I could use your consultation to back up my observations. Perhaps make some of your own." "Yeah, sure. Does it pay?" The dad regrettably shook his head. "It could pay if you wanted to come forward as a primary source. However, you would have to document your whole time with Josh. You might submit your notes as research, but the Rangers might treat it as a confession that you've been hiding werewolves. That's a whole can of worms. Oh, I had a question, if y'all don't mind. Someone on the campaign team brought over some apple cider from their cidery. I'd love to have a taste of it with you guys, but I don't know if that would impact your transformation tonight. Josh, do you have any experience with this?" "Well, maybe a little wouldn't hurt. I've had a couple drinks before I shift without any problems." The dad got up from the table and went into the kitchen. That's when Emmett's mom looked to Josh. "He's trying. I know he's a little much, but it really hit a nerve with him when, your family didn't show up to your wedding. I think he's also trying to make up for how he reacted to you. He's rethought a lot of his positions, and now he can't imagine how somebody could stop loving their kid just because they're a werewolf. Josh bit his lip and curled his nose for a split second. It's been this way even before I got attacked. My family doesn't even know I'm a werewolf. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have assumed. She heard the sound of her husband returning. We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. Josh looked out of the patio door and estimated how much time he had until sunset. Would it be okay if I wanted to talk about it? As long as you're okay with getting him up to speed. She pointed to her husband, who brought in a bottle and 4 short glasses. Emmett quietly wished the cider would be fantastic. Up to speed on what, honey? The man placed the glasses down and pulled the cork out of the bottle with a dull, soft pop. What'd I miss? He began pouring. Emmett's mom explained. So you know how we thought Josh's family didn't like him because he's a werewolf? Yeah, is that not the case? It isn't. I guess this has been going on since before he got bit. The man straightened his back in wonder. I thought I met your parents before at a ranger event. No, yeah, it was a haunted hayride. I never knew you had problems back then. Josh quickly swallowed down a bite of brat. I think they started getting weird after I went to college. They don't care that much that I'm married to another man. When I told my parents I was marrying Emmett, they told me I shouldn't give up and that I still had time and I'm just a late bloomer. They told me that I shouldn't give up on my dreams and just meet a girl and raise a family with her. The mom processed what Josh said for a moment. Did you ever tell them that's what you wanted to do? Josh waffled. I might have said it at some point, but I told them that Emmett and I have been together since then. He sighed and tasted the cider. A warm sweetness met his tongue, followed by a crisp and cleansing tart that left his mouth wet. He could taste Honeycrisp, then Gala, then Envy, then Golden, and Granny Smith. The bite of the alcohol teased and seduced his mouth and throat. The cider impressed everyone at the table with its quality. Emmett looked over to Rocky laying on the mat on the floor, and the dog looked back knowingly. The drink loosened the mother's lips. How much you want to bet this got nothing to do with you being a werewolf or queer? Because a while ago you were talking about how your mom sends you things that you might have been interested in when you were in middle school. It pisses me off, Josh said out loud. The dad asked why, and Josh continued. She puts all this effort in, so she thinks that she's a great mom. Dad doesn't help, he just backs her up. I even tried to tell her what I'm actually interested in. I showed her my welds at work, and I was so proud of them. They were damn near perfect, and it was my first time using a wire welder. I showed her the perfect one, and then the ones that came before it, but she only wanted to criticize the first ones I'd ever done, as if I didn't just show her that I could do better. And my dad just laughs like this is just some funny thing. It sure is adorable little Joshua sucks at his job. Let's put the picture on the fridge right next to his crayon drawing of the family when he was 6. That way, we can remind him of another time when we criticized him so much for his interest that he just stopped doing it. Let's keep this image on the fridge as a memento of the first time we made our kid hate something so much he just quit. I swear, the best way to get them off my back is to be good at something. He spat. His face changed and he covered his mouth. I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from. Emmett's dad nodded slowly. From the heart, probably. He raised his eyebrows at the bombshell Josh dropped and looked about the table. Emmett looked at his dad. The cider's really good. Thanks, Dad, he said, trying to ease the tension. Mom agreed. Yes, it's fantastic. Josh, I'm starting to think your folks are having trouble accepting that you are an adult now. This is just my impression, so take it with a grain of salt. I think there's some bias with them, that when you show them your perfect weld, it's a fluke, and when you show your first sloppy weld, they think it's a better representation of your skill. You also might have grown up to be a different person than they know. It's not uncommon for a parent to see their child after a long period away and not recognize them growing up. And people grow and change a lot in college. It would be weird if they didn't. Your folks don't have the benefit of having been with you to see that growth happen. So when you came back to them, they think, where did my child go? And who is this adult claiming to be him? Josh shook his head in frustration. But it's always been me. Yes, it has, she assured him. You could try talking to them about it. Ask them why they insist on treating you the way they do. Maybe they'll come around. It might not be a hairpin turn, but it's possible. It's also your choice if it's worth the effort. You get to decide if it's something that you want. Yeah, that makes sense. Josh resigned. The family finished their meal and cleaned up. Emmett and Josh went upstairs with Rocky behind them. Emmett turned to the dog and knelt down to pet the sides of his face. Hey, Rocky, tonight's not a good night. I need you to stay downstairs with Mom and Dad. The dog looked dejected. I know you want to be near me, but Josh might be uncomfortable with you there. Rocky turned up his nose. If only you knew what causes his transformations, you would understand. I am trying to be patient, but... He sighed. Josh was looking down the stairs. Is Rocky okay? Yeah, he's fine. He's just being a little clingy, Emmett replied. One favor, perhaps, and then I will leave you two to yourselves, the dog said. What is it? When you dream tonight, make your way to the endless prairie, the place of clover and primrose, the place you went when Josh first bit into your flesh. The word struck a chord with Emmett as his hand moved to his shoulder where he remembered being bit. He recalled the feeling of Josh's teeth and felt a nervousness he previously never felt while in his rabbit form. You can find your predecessor there. What do you mean? Rocky turned and walked down the stairs. Before Emmett could follow, Josh called down to him. Are you ready? The were-bunny stood and turned. Yes, I'm ready, he lied, following his husband up to his bedroom. The memory of Josh attacking him in the very place in his shifted form made Emmett's feet feel heavy and stuck to the floor, each step requiring more effort than the last. Josh's shift still waited for the moon for a few more minutes, and yet Emmett visualized the wolf in him, pinning him down as he'd done before. He'd even vividly recalled the warmth flowing over his skin where his best friend's sharp teeth punctured him. Josh prepared for the night, calmly removing his clothes and stretching out with a lengthy yawn. While Emmett and Josh spent their full moons together, Isaiah's boss, the man who oversaw the operation of the Werewolf Resort, shared a meal with the guests and spoke to them directly. He introduced himself and thanked every person at the table with him. I should have met you all sooner, he said. But I'm glad I could get away from work and see you all. I'm glad you decided to come here. One of the werewolves asked if the man had lycanthropy like the rest of them did, but he shook his head. He overheard Logan whisper something about the resort owner's gold-colored eye to Isaiah, and thought for a moment how to address the short werewolf's concerns. He looked at the person who asked the question about the lycanthropy and smiled warmly. "Don't worry, you're not the first person to ask. A long story short is I lost my eye a very long time ago, and I had to have a transplant. Someone who is not with us anymore made it possible for me to see. Most of the time, people just assume that I have a glass eye. Then they assume I have natural heterochromia, which is rare, but not as rare as being a werewolf. It's interesting when you put it into perspective. It's such a big topic of conversation, but there's a little over 1% of the werewolf population in North America, right here, in this dining hall. That's not to say that I want there to be more." The man casually checked his watch. "Oh, but I'll save that for another time. I wouldn't want to keep you long." "Hold on a second." Logan leaned forward. "Wasn't it you who helped Isaiah make the reverse cologne? The one that makes a person smell like themselves?" The boss thought for a moment and lifted his eyebrows in realization. "Yes, I did. How did that turn out?" "Pretty good. It does exactly what it says." "Well, I'm really glad to hear." Logan then asked the man if he knew how to write in the ancient text that harnessed magic, and the boss made a so-so gesture with his hand. "It depends on which magic you mean. The variant of language magic that I'm proficient with is different from the one that Isaiah is learning. And, might I add, he's making impressive progress, not to embarrass him, but he managed to create a scrying object as easily as a fish to water. Meanwhile, I'm a fish out of water, especially when it comes to that variant. The text refers to a different metaphysical substance. I can't boast proficiency in that, but the writing is beautiful in some respects. For example, in my reliquary there is a scroll written in the ancient language which simply displays an inventory of things the owner of the scroll would not leave him. Many scholars, including myself, believed that it had the power to protect its possessor against theft. I could tell you more if you're interested in learning magic, though some people might find it very difficult. For the moment, though, we must prepare for the moon to rise." Dominic grabbed a piece of cornbread off the table before leaving, with all the other werewolves, to their rooms to prepare. Logan looked at Isaiah as they headed to his room. "I didn't realize you were such an expert. What else do you do here?" "Please, I'm a hobbyist at best. I just balance the budget here." "I think you're being really modest." "I can tell because you say the same thing when I mention your size." "Okay, but I have a really small werewolf form," as I explained, "but you already know that." "Oh, I was thinking of something else." "What were you—" Isaiah clammed up and put his hand on Logan's back to hurry him up and get ready for the moon sooner. Logan saw Isaiah's unamused expression and grinned. "I'm looking for a werewolf in finance. Brown eyes, king size. Stop." The rest of the night transpired according to plan. The boss saw the guests exit their rooms and walk toward the wide-open area where their shift began. 32 of them in total walked barefoot on the grass and offered each other support or space to make their transformation more comfortable. If there was any fear at all, it was out of concern for one another. Their werewolf forms were healthy and ideal. The guests couldn't wish for better. It made the boss glad, but not completely satisfied. He had changed into a much more modest outfit as he walked among the werewolves. He intended to study the magic behind their transformation in an ideal environment. He saw one werewolf with an abundance of energy and decided to walk toward him. From his pocket, he produced a small tube of liver paste and placed a dab of it on his extended forearm. The werewolf noticed the smell and approached the man to investigate. The boss stood patiently, staying still to hopefully embolden the lichen. The werewolf licked and soon nipped at the man's skin tentatively. The boss waited until the beast bit down on his arm like a chew toy. The man smiled while the wolf bit down hard and whipped his head back and forth. Assured that the werewolf felt comfortable and engaged, he reached his other hand on top of the wolf's head and closed his eyes. He examined the spirit and saw something very familiar to what Emmett saw in Josh: the battle between the spiritual malignance and the hellhound whispering to it. Previous attempts to hear the whispers proved unsuccessful due to the background noise from unideal transformation. He finally recognized them clearly. Those whispers struck fear in the boss, but he couldn't make progress in his research without hearing it. While the werewolf growled playfully and tugged at the man's arm, the boss mustered the courage to listen and discover the nature of the power that fought their phantom parasite. Upon hearing the weapon language, the man clenched his jaw to keep himself from crying out. His own spirit felt crushed by the burden of countless, godless miseries and hopeless sorrows. Words of irrefutable power rang out disparaging tones in his own voice. The werewolf, with all of their strength and weaponry, couldn't puncture the man's physical form or do any harm at all to it, but the magic that caused his transformation boiled the man and left his spirit blistered. The whisper created a profound feeling of having your failures on display for an unforgiving audience. The boss couldn't stand it anymore and stopped listening. Awareness of how his physical body felt gave the man comfort, but he knew he had to hurry and write down what he'd experienced. He rubbed the side of the werewolf's face and smiled at them. "Thank you for your help. I'm going to need my arm back now." He extracted his arm from the monstrous wolf jaw and hurried to his office to allow the werewolf and himself each to attend their respective businesses. August arrived at Dominic's calendar faster than he anticipated. Time sped past him as he worked at the gas station and studied driver's education at the local community college. He took his driver's test once already, but he failed. His mom told him that it was common and tried to soothe him. But despite her effort, he heard a shout from someone he couldn't see, even though they yelled right in his ear. "Are you happy now?" the voice yelled. "I'm sorry, Mom," Dominic apologized. "Hey, these things happen," his mom, Kendra, told him. To cheer him up, she made plans with Dominic to let him drive in her car with her as a passenger the next full moon. Dom doubted that his mom had the patience to ride with him on such a long trip, but in the days before the full moon, Kendra executed her prep plans and made bologna and cheese sandwiches, drinks, a playlist of not the worst Christian music, and an inflatable mattress for her to sleep on in case she couldn't stay at the resort. She even talked about looking forward to seeing the place her son went to, the place that allowed her baby to be at home with her. He realized she was committed and let his friend Logan know that he didn't need a ride. The day of the full moon came. Dominic fed the dogs and went back into the house, pouring himself a bowl of cereal. From the dining room, Dom could hear the TV playing in the living room. His mom's boyfriend was watching the latest and greatest in Wild Goose Chase, featuring 5 delusional middle-aged millionaires. With any luck, his mom and he would be gone within an hour. Their bags sat by the door, packed up and ready to go per Kendra's insistence. The episode ended before Dominic finished his cereal. Kendra's boyfriend, Jay, stood up from his chair and lumbered to the dining room, looking down at the backpacks leaning up against each other, waiting by the door. He paused and then kicked them both until they were under the dining room table. "Don't leave your stuff in my way," Jay said as he grabbed a can of pop from the fridge. "Mom told me to put them there." Jay closed the fridge and looked at a paper schedule attached to the front by a magnet. "Why aren't you at work?" "It's a full moon. I switched my day off with someone." "But it says here you were supposed to be there at 7 a.m. It's already 11:30. Brandy's working for me. I'm working on her day off." Jay turned around with the schedule in his hand. "What does this say?" He stood over Dom with his finger on the date, holding the paper menacingly close. "You're not listening. I swapped," Jay cut him off. "What does this say?" "It says 7 a.m. Dominic replied in disbelief. "And what time is it now?" "It's 11:30. "So why aren't you at work?" Dominic sighed. "I needed to take time off for the full moon because I'm a werewolf." Jay shook his head. "Better hope you don't get fired. When I was your age, we worked our shifts. You kids don't even know what jobs are. Y'all have no idea how good you got it." Dominic couldn't bite down on his tongue anymore. "How about you get bit by a werewolf tonight? Then you can see how good you think our lives are once you lived it." Jay replied with something long, loud, and in no way advertiser-friendly before Kendra walked into the room. She looked at the space where she last remembered placing her and Dominic's bags, and then to the place they were in now. She looked at the two men in the room. "What are you guys even talking about? I can hear you from the bedroom." "Your son is scheduled to go to work today, and he decided not to go in." The mother looked at Dom. "I thought you took care of that. What happened?" Dominic nodded. "I swapped my day off with Brandy so that I could go up north for the full moon." "So then, why is Jay telling me you're scheduled to work?" "Because my schedule says I do. I didn't update it." Kendra stopped Jay before he butted in. "But to confirm, no one at work expects you to be there. Is that correct?" "That's right," Dominic replied. It prompted Kendra to look at Jay, her expression scolding him. The man rolled his eyes and left the room. The mother had their bags in her hand, placing them back on the floor near the door where they belonged. They both heard the startlingly loud sound of a door slamming. "Don't mind him," she said. "He'll mellow out after he's had some time to himself." She looked through their bags to make sure that nothing had been broken. While she did this, she talked about the timeline. "I put in some extra sandwiches just in case I can't be with you at the resort. Just remember, those are for both legs of the trip, there and back. So you gotta be careful not to eat them all on the way up. Hey Dom, would you mind checking the tires and the oil real quick?" Dominic stood up and put his cereal bowl in the sink. "No problem." He grabbed the car keys off of the octopus keyring holder and went into the garage. He did his inspection and figured it was good to drive. He took a breather by himself in the garage for a while, only going back inside when he felt ready. He expected his mom to be in the dining room, but she wasn't there. The bag still waited. He looked around the corner and down the hall. His mom walked from Jay's in her bedroom. No wonder he was having such a problem understanding. "The poor guy's having a migraine," Kendra told Dominic. "We'll just hold off for a little while, just until we know he's okay." Dominic didn't recall the man ever suffering from a migraine before, but he also didn't know what caused them. The werewolf thought that they had a little time to spare and sat down on the couch with his cell phone in his hand. He started watching TikToks as a distraction. The short videos made the time go faster. So after a half hour, Dominic looked up how long a migraine lasts. "Hey, Mom," the werewolf started. "We might have to make a different plan for Jay. According to the Mayo Clinic, a migraine could last between 4 and 72 hours. "What? No, that can't be right. That's way too long." Kendra bit her lip. Dominic just shrugged and gestured to his phone. It's the Mayo, Mom. It's a pretty trustworthy source." The mother struggled with this information. "I'll check in on him." She stood and went into the bedroom, carefully closing the door behind her. Dominic read a little more and sent a text message to Logan to see how he was doing. Part of him realized that Logan could have let him drive instead of his mother. He wondered why he didn't think of that sooner. Eventually he realized he thought it would be a nice time to be with his mom, away from Jay for a while. Like a time traveler, he wanted his mom to be the way she was when he first went to the treatment facility. He wanted to pick up where he left off. The realization made Dominic confused about how he should feel. He thought he should feel sad, but instead there was anger. He wanted someone to talk to about these thoughts, and he could do that if he was there with Logan. He considered how they had so much in common, and wondered why he had to be with Isaiah. Dominic was by no means gay, but he felt himself drawn to this one person. Life felt better around him. Life felt easier around him. Life felt better before he got attacked by a werewolf and made him into one of them. When Kendra left the bedroom, she had an anxious look on her face. "He's having a really bad time, Dom." The werewolf checked the time. "Mom, we have to leave. We have a long drive. We're going to have to skip dinner as it is." "I'm not just going to leave him like this." "All right, should we bring him to a hospital?" Kendra sighed. "We can't afford a hospital stay. And he doesn't want to be moved. We just have to wait it out." Dominic's eyes widened. "I can't do that." He grabbed the bags and brought them to the car in the garage. He came back, keys in hand, and talked to her louder. "Come on. We have to get the show on the road." The woman glanced at the bedroom door. "No, forget him and come with me." "Honey, you're being too loud." "We can talk more about it in the car, Mom." "Dominic, I don't know what he'll do if I just leave him here." The werewolf sighed. "I don't know what I'm going to do if I stay here, but I assume it's nothing good. Mom, I could attack you. If I hurt you, then there's a good chance you'll have lycanthropy like I do. You don't want that. It's weird and it's hard, and people hate you." "Baby, I don't hate you. I just don't know what to do right now. I don't have any options." Dominic shook his head. "Mom, I love you, but I have to go. I'm taking the car." Even the werewolf was in denial about the time. The sun was already starting to set. He only came to his senses when he felt his phone vibrating. Logan was calling him. "Hello?" Dominic answered. "Hey there, are you at the resort yet?" Logan asked him. A part of Dominic was glad that he cared. "I'm really behind. I don't know if I'll be able to make it." There was a silence on Logan's end. "Are you still there?" "Yeah, I'm here. Can you make it to my dad's place? He's closer to you than the resort is. He'd probably put you in chains, though." "Yeah, that's fine. It's nothing new for me. Can your dad pick me up?" "He could, but I don't know how much time we have. Is your car working? What happened?" Yeah, it's working. We just had an emergency last minute. I don't know how much longer it's gonna be. Dominic sighed. Maybe I should just call the Rangers and see what they can do. Your odds are better if you drove without a license. Listen, I'm gonna hang up with you. I'm gonna call my dad. All right. Thanks, Logan. In his mind, Dominic said he loved him. His lips remained sealed, though. He looked out the window and saw the sky was getting darker and darker. Dominic, honey, the mom said, are you going to be okay? The werewolf's eyes were glued to the window. At any moment, the first sliver of a full moon would rise and trigger his transformation. Suddenly, the bedroom door opened. Jay stomped out and slammed the door behind him in a violent display that a person suffering from a migraine would never do. Would you guys be quiet? I've had it with your constant moping and complaining. I'm so sorry you couldn't go to your super special monthly getaway. Mother of God, if I handled disappointment as badly as you guys did, I wouldn't put up with either of you in my house. You'd go back to the treatment centers where you belong. Dominic's senses started to dull. His vision blurred and split. He could still hear the man yelling at him while his body felt warm and sweaty. He had to get out of that room. Dominic felt around, leaving his phone behind as he walked into the kitchen, but Jay followed. Oh, what's wrong, Dom? Why are you walking away? Isn't this what you wanted all along, to be the center of attention? The werewolf demanded that Jay get away from him, but the older man didn't heed the warning. Oh, look at you. You're milking this for everything it's worth. You must be so proud of yourself. Are you happy now? Those were the last words Dominic could understand. The last comment erased his desire to resist shape-shifting, futile though it was. Jay never saw a real werewolf transformation. In truth, that man drifted through life with the confidence that lycanthropy affected other people, whom he had no connection to. For him, it was more of a subject to be argued about than a condition real people had. That was until this moment. Jay grew accustomed to towering over people, for most of his life actually. But now he had to look up to Dominic, who reached the ceiling. Tatters of the werewolf's clothing dropped from his body as they ripped, and he grew and produced a thick coat of tan and white fur. A menacing, throaty growl rippled the air like a timpani. The sound made Jay's face change. The only set of car keys they had were in the pocket of the destroyed pants laying at Dominic's feet. Jay stepped backwards and accidentally knocked Kendra over. He gave her hardly a thought as he ran out the front door. A minute later, he returned to grab his phone, only to find the heavy wooden door locked and deadbolted. Kendra brushed her front off and tried to ignore the banging and yelling coming from the front. Looks like you're over that migraine you had. Just in time to leave me at the first sign of danger. She carefully looked around the corner into the kitchen to see her werewolf son sitting on the floor. He was huge, all right. Still overweight. Dominic, honey. Mom's here. Don't you worry about that banging. I'm not letting him back in. The werewolf snarled and growled as he pressed his body against the far corner of the room. His ears flattened against his head, and his tail clung tightly to his body between his legs. She'd seen this posture before when she adopted her dogs. Dominic was scared, but not for himself, because what could hurt him like this? He was scared for her. There. Everything's going to be okay. You're doing good. She stepped closer only to hear the growling become more intense. Okay, I'll stay back here then. I'll give you your space. The woman noticed the banging stopped and looked at the front door. The cooler with all the snacks and the food that she had prepared for the trip stood in her view. The woman brought the cooler over and sat down on the floor, as close as Dominic would allow her to, which was the opposite corner of the room. She reached for a bologna and cheese sandwich and unwrapped it before tossing it at her son, making a soft plap noise as it hit his thigh. The wolf smelled the food and tentatively lowered his snout to the floor to eat it. It wasn't a large sandwich to begin with, but it looked even smaller in his mouth. "You must be really hungry," Kendra said as she tossed another and another sandwich, including the ones she was planning on eating. "I'm sorry I didn't make it up to the resort. I'm sure dinner would have been nice." Dominic became more comfortable, but he still leaned against the wall, away from his mom. His table manners were non-existent, licking whatever flavor remained on the floor when the sandwiches were gone. He stretched out his paws and moved to press the other side of his body against the corner. His growling settled down a bit. His mom opened the cooler again and looked inside. Dominic lifted his head, looking between the cooler and his mom, his tail sporadically wagging. "I'm sorry, honey. There aren't any more sandwiches." She shook her head and sniffed, placing her hand over her face. "I knew I should have made more. I should have stuck with the plan. I should have not listened to that pissy little man-child. Seriously, a migraine? And I believed him. What was I thinking?" She looked at Dominic and recognized telltale sleepy blinks. "I want so much to reassure you that nothing bad's gonna happen. But I know I can't do that. If I could do that, then none of this would have happened. You wouldn't be here huddled in a corner eating bologna and cheese on the kitchen floor. If I had stopped all this back then, maybe you'd have a normal childhood. You'd be part of the Eagle Scouts or the Junior Rangers, and not some grimy work camp with pretty pamphlets and promises. Maybe I'd still be with your father. Baby, I wish it was easy to talk to you. I wish it was as easy as talking to whoever this is. I just can't say it to your face. It would kill me. I'm so glad you can't see me right now." She wiped her face and looked at the wolf. He lay motionless aside from his slowly rising and falling chest. She wondered if he slept in a bed at the resort. She thought back to her many conversations where her son told her about the place where he went every full moon, but she failed to remember any of the details. She went to the living room and pushed the couch over so that she could see the wolf and lay down at the same time. She watched her boy slumber, and soon she did as well. Several days after the full moon in August, Logan's manager, Alex, wanted every employee to come in for an important meeting. Logan found that many of the parking spots at the restaurant were blocked by some kind of semi-trailer. He recognized one of his coworkers' cars across the street at the grocery store parking lot and decided to park there as well. When he got out of his car, he saw the other employee and waved. "Morning." "Morning, bud. How you doing?" "I'm decent, thanks. Do you know what this is about?" "I was hoping you knew." He tossed a cigarette on the ground and crushed it with his shoe. They walked past the trailer and into the main entrance where the other people in Werewolf uniforms were standing. Alex beckoned the two over. "Hey, good morning, guys. Let me catch you up. So, many of you have heard that a few days ago, a man in the area almost lost his life to a werewolf who we thought was receiving treatment. Okay? So this werewolf transformed anyway and presented an immediate threat to members of their household. Fortunately, no one was harmed. The thing is, if events like these, it's not a good look for Werewolf. Okay, people don't come in and after these things happen. Now, we want to make something very clear. While we embrace and display werewolf iconography and such, the safety of our staff and our guests is paramount. An employee raised their hand. And what are we supposed to do about it? We can't tell if someone's a werewolf. I'm getting to that, Alex continued. Our official policy is that we close the shop an hour and a half before the next full moon. It's not a popular decision, but it's the right one. That gives us enough time to clean everything up and get home. This is also important. We need everybody here on those days. We can't have anybody taking that day off. We split up the work, and it won't take very long. Okay, I get it. It's not easy, I know this. That's why, and the company's not doing this, I'm doing this. On those days when we all have to come in, you can have a second shift meal, anything you want, within reason, okay? It's on me. Logan raised his hand. Alex, I really can't do that. I'm going to the cabin on the next full moon. Logan, I get it. We all have to make sacrifices for the team, trust me. I don't want to do this stuff. Between you and me, it really sucks that people like us have to bend over backwards because of other people's problems. I think it's really irresponsible for a werewolf to just skip treatment so that they could go, I don't know, sit at home and play fucking Fortnite. Alex wouldn't hear any more objections. We need to get the ball rolling here. We did some research and found a company that can tell if someone is a werewolf from a blood sample. They're here today in that trailer. All of us are being tested. Let's get that knocked out so that we can get our parking lot back. Again, Logan objected. That doesn't make sense. You can't check for lycanthropy with a blood test. They've done studies. I have heard that, but this is new technology, Alex said. They finally figured it out. It's one needle. You'll be done, and you can have some pop afterwards. Let's get moving. I need someone at the drive-thru. Against his better judgment, Logan went to the trailer. He didn't feel particularly threatened with the idea that they might find out he's a werewolf. His father explained to him that it was impossible to find werewolf blood on him, or on any werewolf in their human form. The trailer looked like an RV converted into a small clinic. He filled out the paperwork, showed his ID, and allowed the nurse to draw his blood. When he was done, they told him that he was a good sport and sent him back to work. Disgruntled, Logan grabbed a large cup and filled it up to the brim with cherry coke before putting his headset on. He felt sick to his stomach. But if anyone asked, he would blame the needle. No one needed to know that he had bled for his vampire father before. And nobody would have to. Agent Diego Martinez found himself under more than the usual amount of scrutiny at the Ranger Association. He pored over witness statements of friends of the victims of the massacre where the werewolf escaped an illegal species treatment facility near Springfield, Missouri. The uncertainty was giving the perpetrator enough wiggle room to evade them. He was still at large, the savage murderer who called himself Fenrir, the one who takes revenge against Midgard. The number of bodies didn't match the number of beds plus the number of workers supposedly at the site at the time. The werewolf had to have had an accomplice to start the fire that burned the entire admin office to the ground. But who? And who burned the files of each of the werewolves, erasing them? The agent lamented that this site was privately owned, because that meant that they were not obligated to update the werewolf registry like the state-run facilities. Diego's assistant, Maxwell, knocked on the agent's office door. "Sir, We found something. The man turned to the bird. A biochem research company processed blood samples looking for werewolf blood. Martinez furrowed his brow. Unless they caught him while he was shifted, they're not going to find any werewolf blood. Sorry, Max, I just don't think that this is the breakthrough you think it is. Max continued. When the company referenced the DNA library, it flagged one of the samples. Diego thought for a moment and widened his eyes. Did we find a missing person? Yes, sir. I haven't informed the police. You're going to want to stay seated for this. No, no, no. The agent rose from his seat and grabbed his coat from off of the wall hanger. We have to let the police know right away. Let me see. He reached for the file and opened it while he reached for his laminated badge. He froze in place and looked at the file with impossibility. The man sat down as he read the file and compared the notes with his observation he made at the unrestrained werewolf resort. He found a physical match. You know, lab tests are not perfect. That's why this one got flagged. Max croaked. I didn't want to believe it either, but usually when a false positive comes up, it doesn't automatically point to someone with the same name, age, and resemblance to his parents. The bird tilted his head. He's an unaccounted for person. Look, red hair, red fur. Short man, short werewolf. And he knew exactly what to destroy and who to kill to eliminate loose ends. Almost like he spent years listening to his father's police stories. You're editorializing. There's no way to know these things. Sir, you can't pretend you don't see what I see. He sighed. Mr. Martinez, your son is still alive. But there's a distinct possibility that he's the Fenrir you're looking for.